Okay, today I'm going over Chapter 2, Section 2, the Atonement as Defense. Some people like to call the word atonement at one-ment. Means the same thing. Okay, paragraph 1 is telling us you can do anything I ask, meaning Jesus, meaning our Christ self. Remember, Jesus is us. Jesus is a representation of the Christ consciousness, which is within all of us. We are all capable of being our Christ self. And that's why he's telling us you can do anything I ask. I have asked you to perform miracles and have made it clear that miracles are natural, corrective, healing, and universal. Because when we are not being influenced by the false beliefs of the ego, we would naturally practice miracles, which is the same as forgiveness, which is the same as seeing truth everywhere, knowing that everyone and everything is just love and nothing else is real. It says there is nothing they cannot do, meaning miracles, but they cannot be performed in the spirit of doubt or fear. So if we're feeling fear, if we're believing anything that comes from the ego, we can't perform miracles. When you are afraid of anything, you are acknowledging its power to hurt you. So when we are afraid of the ego, we are giving it power to hurt us. When we are afraid of love, we are acting like it's going to hurt us. We're giving it power, and that creates more fear. And then we run away from it more. Okay? It says you believe in what you value. If you are afraid, you will inevitably value wrongly. All right? So whenever we feel fear or any other emotion that stems from fear, which is like all negative emotions that aren't coming from love, we know that we have valued incorrectly. We're not valuing the correct teacher, the correct messages. And therefore, we will value wrongly because we're listening to our fears. We're listening to the ego. And it says, if you are afraid, you will inevitably value wrongly, and by endowing all thoughts with equal power, will inevitably destroy peace. So when we give equal power to our ego thoughts, when we give equal power to fear, sorry, it's a little hot. Started off cold and now I'm hot. It always happens as soon as I channel. As soon as the spirit starts channeling through me, the temperature turns up. Sorry. Okay. So when we value the ego, we destroy peace. When we put our value in the wrong place, we are then destroying peace. Okay, but when we value correctly and we follow spirit's messages, it says this piece is totally incapable of being shaken by errors of any kind. So when we know truth, it's unshakable. The truth cannot leave us. It denies the ability of anything not of God to affect you. So love equals God. Anything that's not a pure extension of love isn't God, and it cannot actually affect you. This is the proper use of denial. It says it is not used to hide anything, but to correct error. It brings all error into the light, and since error and darkness are the same, it corrects error automatically. Okay, so when we bring in light, it takes the darkness away, is what that means. That's what it's saying. So, and then it's also describing denial, the proper use of denial. Because in our world, when it comes to psychology and things like that, people would be told, oh, denial's bad. It's a bad thing. Don't suppress, But what the Course is describing here is this kind of denial is good. It's when we deny the ego. It's when we deny what is false. We remove that, we shine light on it, and it goes away. And then all that's left is the truth, which is love, the love of God, which is what we all really are. Paragraph 2 tells us true denial is a powerful protective device. You can and should deny any belief that error can hurt you. That's how we want to use denial. So far, because we believe we're in this illusory dream world, we have been denying our true selves. We have been denying the truth of the God self that we really are inside. We have been denying our Christ consciousness. We have been denying our truth. So what the Course is telling us to do is to flip that. Stop denying the truth and start denying what is untrue, what is wrong, what is leading us into darkness. That is what It's telling us here in this section to deny, and that is very powerful to use this denial. This kind of denial is not a concealment, but a correction. All right. So much like our illusory world would try to tell people that denial is bad, it's a concealment, the Course is telling us not in this case. This concealment is a correction. Okay. Concealing the ego's wrong thought system is a correction. Your right mind depends on it, it tells us. Okay. We cannot be in our right mind unless we deny the ego's thoughts. Denial of error is a strong defense of truth, but denial of truth results in miscreation. All right, that's what we've done. We've miscreated. We put our value in ego thoughts. We put our value in fear. We denied our true self. That's why the denial of the ego is a very powerful tool. So it tells us the denial of truth results in miscreation, which is the projections of the ego. The way that we miscreate is by projecting the illusory world with our ego. It says, in the service of the right mind, the denial of error frees the mind and reestablishes the freedom of the will. When the will is really free, it cannot miscreate because it recognizes only truth. So when we deny ego thoughts, that leaves our free will open to recognize and see the only thing that's real, which is the truth, which is love extending forever in just beingness. Paragraph 3 says, you can defend truth as well as error. Okay, that's when we make the mistake and we defend the wrong thing. Everyone defends his treasure and will do so automatically. Okay, so this is something normal that we beings do, is to defend our treasure. But the real questions are, what do you treasure? And how much do you treasure it? All right, so we have to ask ourselves, well, what are we treasuring? Are we treasuring our ego thoughts? Are we treasuring this illusory world? Are we treasuring anything that is leading us in the wrong direction? Or are we denying the world? Are we denying the ego thoughts? Are we denying the illusion and focusing on what is real, which is love? It says the means are available whenever you ask. Okay, so the love is always there waiting. Spirit's always there waiting. The truth is always there waiting for us. We just have to be open to receive it. We just have to say yes to that. You can, however, save time if you do not protract this step unduly. The correct focus will shorten it immeasurably. So these are just more words to tell us that miracles or forgiveness collapses time. Time and miracles, and it's going to continue to tell us in this section, even atonement, is only here as an illusory tool to help us get back to our truth, which is just the eternal extension of love. That's all that really exists. So the way it shortens time is by collapsing time, because when we practice miracles, we no longer need to keep practicing certain lessons to understand the truth and the reality of who we really are. Because when we're practicing miracles, we are doing that. We're seeing the truth of who we and everyone else really is. So that's what collapses time. We don't need to have more illusory time to keep practicing that when we do it. We are proving to ourselves, our higher selves, that, oh, we are learning. And then our higher self knows to collapse that time. Our Christ self knows to collapse that time. We no longer need to keep practicing those same particular lessons, because through our action of miracles, through our action of practicing forgiveness, through our action of seeing with our spiritual sight the truth of who and what everything really is, which is love, then we can collapse time. We can make our illusory dream shorter. We can go home to God quicker. What seems like shorter, what seems like quicker, because none of it's even real and there's no such thing as time. All right, paragraph 4. The atonement is the only defense that cannot be used destructively because it is not a device you made. Okay, so we are not responsible for atonement. That is coming from Holy Spirit. So we didn't make it. It's coming from the truth. It's coming from pure spirit. So it's something that we cannot use destructively. We have used many other things destructively. We have used our mind destructively. We have used our free will destructively. We have used our extension, our desire to extend, we've used destructively because we decided to extend through projection instead of extending love like spirit does, like our true self does. Okay. These are ways that we have destructively used things, but it's saying we can't destructively use the atonement because we didn't even make it. It's there from spirit. The atonement principle was in effect long before the atonement began. The principle was love, and the atonement was an act of love. Acts were not necessary before the separation because belief in space and time did not exist. So before the separation, we were just one with God, extending love eternally, just being, just a beingness of love. But once we had our tiny mad idea and mistakenly thought that we separated from God, that's when we suddenly needed the atonement because we got lost. The atonement is an illusory practice within the illusion to get us to see truth. So that is the act of love. Like a miracle is an act of love, it's an act of remembering the truth. But within reality, that's not needed because there's no need to remember anything because you're already there, just extending love forever with God. There's no need for waking up. There's no need for time. There's no need for atonement. So it's saying the principle behind atonement, which is just pure extension of love, always existed because it's coming from the truth of spirit. But the act of atonement, okay, the act of expressing love is a part of our illusory world. It's a tool for us to wake up because we have to keep practicing this act to eventually remember the truth of who we really are. Then it will just be natural. It was only after the separation that the atonement and the conditions necessary for its fulfillment were planned. So there was no need for atonement until we thought we separated from God. Then a defense so splendid was needed that it could not be misused, although it could be refused. So atonement cannot be undone. It cannot be destroyed. It cannot be misused. We cannot do any of those things with atonement the way that we've seemingly destroyed many things within our illusory world, but we can refuse it. And that's what we've been doing. We didn't even know it was available. Most of us, we didn't even know that it was something that we could achieve. We didn't know it was something to strive for. We didn't even know it was something that necessarily existed. So, what the Course is teaching us to do is to accept the atonement, the at one-ment, knowing that we are all one with God and with one another. The atonement thus becomes the only defense that is not a two-edged sword. It can only heal. So things that are a two-edged sword are things that the ego can use against you. The ego can wrongly interpret and use against you. But the ego does not have the ability to do that with atonement. Okay, so in paragraph 5, it says that the atonement ultimately is to make learning complete. The atonement is the final lesson. Learning itself, like the classrooms in which it occurs, is temporary. So why is the classroom temporary? Why is learning temporary? Why is the need for atonement temporary? Because the world is temporary. Because our dream illusion is temporary. It's not real. It's not really here. It's a classroom. We are using the tools of our dream classroom to learn to value the correct message, the correct teacher, so that we can wake up. So when we've learned the final lesson of atonement and we accept God's love fully and we accept who and what we really are in total truth with no doubts and no confusion, then the need for learning is over. That's why the atonement is the final lesson. It says only while there is a belief in differences is learning meaningful. So as long as we're trapped in our illusory world and we believe that there are differences, we have to still keep learning. We're going to have to keep learning until we understand the truth of who and what we really are, which is love extending eternally at home in heaven with God. And heaven is just an awareness of oneness. Paragraph 6 tells us the atonement is the device by which you can free yourself from the past as you go ahead. It undoes your past errors, thus by making it unnecessary for you to keep retracing your steps without advancing to your return. In this sense, the atonement saves time, but like the miracle it serves, does not abolish it. As long as there is a need for atonement, there is a need for time. But the atonement, as a completed plan, has a unique relationship to time. Until the atonement is complete, its various phases will proceed in time, but the whole atonement stands at time's end. And at that point, the bridge of return has been built. Okay, that was just some of that paragraph. And really all those words are saying is that atonement is a learning device. It's temporary because this world is temporary and our need to learn is temporary. It's saying all this stuff about past and future because when we are believing we are egos and when we are believing that we're really in this illusory world, we are constantly focusing on the past in order to make decisions about the future. And it keeps us in this loop all the time. It keeps us out of the present, holy instant moment where we know the truth of who and what we really are. It's telling us the atonement saves time. Like I already said, practicing miracles collapses time. I have a whole video about that if you want to learn more about that. So, and it's telling us as long as there is a need for atonement, there is a need for time. Because the only time we would need atonement is if we don't know who and what we really are, when we're confused and mistaken, which is now. We all think we're here, so we're all confused, and we need time right now, and we need the atonement so that we can wake up and learn the truth. It says the atonement stands at time's end, and at that point, the bridge of return has been built. So the reason atonement stands at time's end is because once we fully accept the atonement, which is fully accepting the love of God, the truth of who and what we really are, then the need for atonement is over and the need for time is over. All right, paragraph 7 says, the atonement is a total commitment. You may still think this is associated with loss, a mistake all the separated sons of God make in one way or another. It is hard to believe a defense that cannot attack is the best offense. This is what is meant by the meek shall inherit the earth. They will literally take it over because of their strength. Okay, so the meek shall inherit the earth means not doing the ego attack thing. All right, receiving God's love, being passive and receiving God's love. That's what it means by meek. Okay, we are accepting God's love. We are not on the defense and attacking with ego's thought system. And so when it says they'll literally take it over, meaning the meek shall inherit the earth, because of their strength, it's an internal strength. It's the strength of truth, of spirit, of love, not the defensive, oh, look at me, ego strength. Not that, the exact opposite of that. And so it's telling us the atonement is a total commitment. This is what Jesus did when he was here. Atonement was his total commitment. And he is telling us in this course how to do what he did, how to be fully committed to spirit, how to be fully dependent upon the love of God. And that is how you can reach atonement. So at the end of that paragraph, which is also the end of this section, it says, the miracle turns the defense of atonement to your real protection. And as you become more and more secure, you assume your natural talent of protecting others, knowing yourself as both a brother and a son. Okay, so when it says it's talking about protecting others, that we become more secure and then we can protect others and we know ourselves as a brother and a son. Again, don't pay attention to the pronoun stuff. It doesn't mean anything. As we continue to learn to deny the ego, to deny the ego's thought system, to deny the ego's sight of separation and differences and levels, as we continue to do that and we continue to let in the truth, practice miracles, practice forgiveness, letting the truth of who and what we really are continuously sink into us again and again as we continue practicing, that slowly we will become more and more secure and we will assume our natural talent of protecting others. What that means, protecting others, means seeing others as the love of God, of who and what they really are. Seeing others not as the ego sees them, but as spirit sees them. That's how we protect our brothers. We're protecting their innocence. We're protecting the oneness of who and what we really are. That is true protection. And when it says knowing yourself as both a brother and a son, meaning knowing that we are one with everyone and everything that appears within the multiverse, and we are the child of God. So that's what this section is telling us. It's talking about atonement. It's explaining what it is. It's at-one-ment, atonement. It's knowing the truth that we are just love, extending eternally with one another and with God. We are all one. And the more we know this and the more we practice this, the more we naturally become our real, true selves, which is a forever extension of love.